topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
And welcome to Triversity Talk. It's me, Wendy Stewart, right here with you on Wednesday night. You can't count on many things in life anymore, but you know what? You can always count on me Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. I hope everyone has had a really excellent week. I have had, I don't know why this has happened, but I've had a very politically charged last couple of days. It's just, you know how sometimes things just happen and you don't even know why. First of all, I attended an amazing event in Milford, Pennsylvania, Readers and Writers Festival. It had so many great writers there, many of which were female. And I think I've just been trying to explain to people, because my show last week, I was by myself. I didn't have a co-host. I'm really meeting some of the most dynamic women that are just out there now. And I just want to interview them by myself. So just bear with me. So we had this Readers and Writers Festival, and Triversity, this organization, LGBTQ Center, we sponsored an event that was the author James Kirkpatrick. Okay. And his book was Secret City, The Hidden History of Gay Washington. This was extremely appealing as a topic, and I'll tell you why. You know, many of us who came of age in the 80s and into now did not experience the kinds of outing that happened when you had a political career. And in James' book, he takes you from Franklin Roosevelt all the way up to Bill Clinton, and how a person's career could absolutely be destroyed and their life destroyed by coming out. And in many ways, that was a little hard for me to wrap my head around, right? Because we've made all these strides. But then again, sometimes you have to think, with some of the things that are going on lately, how big are the strides, and are those strides permanent? Well, I am very excited to have an amazing guest with me tonight. She was recommended to me by Rachel Lansing, who wrote a book about the actress Joy Lansing, who was her lover. And Rachel has been on the show, and she says you absolutely have to meet this author. She's incredible. Her book is called Making the Rounds: Defying Norms in Love and Medicine. It is the story of a young woman in the 70s striving to have both love and a career. Oh my God, I can relate to that. And be a lesbian and a doctor at the same time, when society did not support these things. So let us all welcome Patricia Grayhall. And there you are.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much for coming on. First of all, I'm very excited to talk about your book here tonight. This is, I know you've written some articles and things, but this is your first book that's a memoir.
Absolutely. Yes. It's the first personal memoir I've written. I've written a lot of medical articles and book chapters, but writing about one's personal life is totally different.
Oh, right. Right. Because in many ways, as human beings, we keep a lot of stuff bottled up inside of us, and the process throughout our lifetimes, right? We keep journals. Well, I did anyway, journals. And my big thing was photo albums of like the last 40 years. My God, I tell my daughter, please, when I pass, don't throw them out. It's the only thing you have to keep. But, we have history as human beings. Mm-hmm. You came of age in a very pivotal time in our society. You grew up in, where did you come from?
Arizona.
Okay, that's what I thought. What was Arizona like if you were young and gay and ambitious in the 70s?
Well, I was convinced that I was the only lesbian in Arizona, for one thing. And when I was 15 and I heard my parents discussing what lesbians were in the living room one day, I thought, well, am I a lesbian? Because I like girls, you know.
I,
So
yeah, you open up, that's like the beginning of your book. You had a friend that had given you a book about two women loving each other.
well, not exactly. When I went to the library to look up what lesbians were, it said that homosexuality was a mental illness.
Yeah.
That homosexuals were doomed to have unhappy lives, to not be able to sustain relationships or hold down jobs. So it didn't sound very promising to me, but I didn't buy that, you know, I was mentally ill. And so when I could, in those books, they mentioned an organization called Daughters of Bilitis. And this was formed early on first as a social organization and then a political one. But I found their phone number, which in 1965 was hard to do, and I called them collect.
Yeah.
And because one
That's
day,
great.
when my parents were not home, and I talked to this very gruff sounding woman on the phone, scared me to death. But, you know, I said, you know, how do I meet? I think I might be a lesbian. How do I meet other girls like me? And she said, well, how old are you? And I said, 15. She said, well, you know, you're out of luck because, you know, the main place to meet people is in bars and you're too young for that. And I said, well, do you have any literature, anything you could send me? And she said, well, we have a publication called The Ladder. And I said, please, can you send it? So, you know, I waited with bated breath for this to arrive in the mailbox in a plain brown
I was going
envelope.
to say a plain brown cover.
And I tore it open, and indeed there was this picture of a hand reaching for another hand, and there was some poetry that was romantic. And so I hid it away in my underwear drawer. But unfortunately,
Story.
my mother found it. I don't know what she was doing, rummaging in my underwear drawer. But in any case, my best friend was over to tell me about her boyfriend. We were sitting on the bed together, having this intimate conversation with the door closed in my bedroom. And my mother bursts in and she holds up this magazine in her hand and says to my friend, did you give my daughter this filthy trash on lesbians? And my friend was totally shocked, you know. I mean, she just was speechless. And in fact, she said, no, and kind of ran past my mother and out the door. And I heard her tires screeching as she took off.
Was it because she was attacked by your mother, or was it because the fact that you might have been gay?
Well, the problem was that she never spoke to me again. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's something that stays with somebody, right? That's one of those Pandora's boxes. I'm sure, like you think about from time to time when we all go back in our heads and think, I wonder what happened too.
Mm-hmm.
I hope she gets your book. I hope she finds your book. And
yeah, I should look her up and send it to her, actually. That would be kind of fun.
So it was very isolating for you at that time. We take a lot for granted now, right? You can come of age now and people are gender fluid. A lot of the stuff that you're describing, the isolation, the books in the brown paper bag. I remember the gay novel that I'm a few years younger than you, but not by much. And there was a book called, do you remember The Well of Loneliness?
Oh yeah, that was a classic.
I mean, anything that had to do with being gay in those times, it was just going to be a tragedy.
Oh yeah. And of course, the drugstores did have lesbian pulp fiction, but it was always the lesbian always had to die in the end, or
Right.
live a tortured life, or come to some tragic end.
It would be horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible, or go back to men. And
right. See the error of their ways.
right, exactly. So it wasn't, there was nothing encouraging. But now, of course, there's a lot more support for queer youth that are coming out. There's support groups. There's, the media, there is a lot more supportive now. The stories that feature queer people have happy endings for
Absolutely.
change, and they're healthy, happy people.
Yeah.
and it makes a huge difference, I think, for one's self-esteem.
Oh my gosh. And then some. But it's really interesting with this going on. Okay, you still were able to defy what the odds were in those days. And I certainly remember them. And you got yourself to San Francisco.
Yeah. So, I tried my best to be straight, of course.
Right.
Because let me back up a little bit. So we, all of us, we all want to love and be loved, right? We all want friendship. We all want to belong. And most of us want meaningful work. But if we come of age in a culture where we're told that who we love and who we are is wrong, as I, grew up in, then life can be very challenging. And so you're tempted to change who you are and who you love to try to belong. And that's what I did. I tried to be straight. And I had a boyfriend who I really liked. And, we got along well. And he was like a friend. And we went to visit his family. And I had to stay in the room with his sister. And unfortunately, I found that I had more attraction to his sister than I did to him, which caused some problems. And but I persevered in trying to be straight. I ended up having a very cringeworthy affair with an older man, thinking that it might, convert me somehow.
You were trying what we called in those days self-conversion.
Self-conversion, yeah, and it didn't work. And then, back in the 70s, teenagers had a lot more sex than they do now, and it was pretty conventional to have sex, when you're certainly by your first year of college. And so I did, mostly so I could be in foursome double dates with this woman I was in love with. But nevertheless, I got pregnant, and I had to have, and abortion was illegal.
Right.
So I ended up in Mexico in someone's bedroom having an illegal abortion.
Oh my God.
Which, I think young people today have no idea what it was like back in the day. But I guess
we call them abortions, with coat hangers.
Yeah, unfortunately,
women often died, or they were ruined for life, and they couldn't have children again. And yeah, I'm just going to jump ahead on that point because of what just happened with Roe versus Wade. And I don't think people realize, I'm hoping with voting this year, no matter what party a female belongs to, that they come out in droves and do the right thing, vote the right way, so that we can make Roe versus Wade effective again.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, totally. Just to think that once again, women become childbearing chattel of the state with no control over their reproductive function. It just makes me so sad.
Well, and also Male decided, yeah, I forgot who it was recently. Was it? I don't think it was Lindsey Graham, but it was someone else that basically said, if someone gets pregnant from rape or incest, well, that's God's way. Oh my God. The fact that we're having this conversation, right? And we know what we went through and when abortions were illegal. And then when they became legal through places like Planned Parenthood, wonderful places, right? That everything was clean and safe and supportive. The amount of friends whose hands I held, all right, that was it. We fought for that. And now it's like, what happened?
Right.
How did this happen?
Well, I took a little bit of solace from a book I recently read called Woman, an American Idea. It was by Lillian Faderman. And, she describes how we move, we make progress and then we slip back, but we never slip completely back.
Okay.
So, the hope is that, okay, so we've slipped back, but hopefully women, those who love women, will come to their senses, go to the polls, and, throw the bums out, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally.
Right.
Literally. Well, from her mouth to God's ears. Lately these days, in terms of LGBTQ plus society, I feel, and it's happened from doing these shows, I really feel often that the ground is extremely shaky. All right. The fact that they could get something passed that says don't say gay in Florida, that same person could send illegal immigrants in a bus to Martha's Vineyard, not tell them where they were going, all right, promise them jobs and housing. And it's not the same as doing what they did to 60 million Jews, but you know what? It smells of the same kind of act. And it is so completely wrong. And I was talking last time, I remember the Explorers Club in New York, and we have so many dynamic female astronauts, so many dynamic women there. But there was a guy I was talking to at the bar, and I found out about his politics really quick. He said to me, well, first of all, they're illegal. They shouldn't have gotten on those. They shouldn't have tried to come in this country in the first place. They shouldn't have tried to get on those buses and getting stuck in Martha's Vineyard. What the hell did they think was going to happen? And I just looked at him, and you know what, Patricia, I had to walk away.
Well, you have to walk away.
I have to walk. I have learned, walk away, Renee, because you know what? I don't have a lawyer mind where I'm really good at arguing my points, I have to tell you. So I'm learning that I have to walk away when I am so completely enraged. And I'm enraged with all the strides that we've made. You're a doctor, and the amount of women that are doctors nowadays in all different fields, the amount of women that are doing incredible things in our society. How could this have happened? I mean,
I know. And I took heart, Chris, when I went to medical school, it was before Title IX, which guaranteed equal education to women, and or equal education regardless of sex. And so in my class, there were only 5 women out of 100. And the culture was so different, and as I was the only woman intern, the culture of medicine was very macho. We were encouraged to vie, to do invasive procedures on dying patients just so we could learn. There was,
I had no idea.
Yeah, it was, and medical training was like the army. You had to suffer, it was survival of the fittest. And
well, you went many days without getting this whole thing with rotations and stuff. And I'm not sure if that's changed much at all, working day after day, going on very little sleep. I don't quite understand the point of that. What is the point of that?
Well, the point of that basically is like boot camp.
It's boot camp. Okay. To toughen you up.
to toughen you up. And it really is just a matter of survival. It's really not, well, back when I was in training, things have gotten better, in current times. But when I was in training, it was really all about, how much can you take, and can you take it and still, remain upright. In
Right.
fact, in my internship, it was, although I was the only woman, it was actually the men that were dropping like flies. There was, it was one of my fellow interns, developed acute schizophrenia and had to be hospitalized in a mental institution. And
That's terrible.
one
And
of
you
the,
think it was set off by
well,
the,
who knows what his vulnerability was, but then another intern got this horrible case of pneumonia, and was hospitalized for weeks. So the rest of us, of course, had to pick up the slack, which made it all worse. But yeah, and what I was going to say about how the culture of medicine has changed, because now over 50% of medical school classes are women.
absolutely.
And there have been some studies done that show actually the patients of women surgeons have better outcomes of surgery. And this huge study that was done with in Medicare recipients showed that patients of women have actually lower mortality, less recurrent hospital admissions, and do better overall.
That is very interesting. Do you
Right.
think it's got to do with a nurturing factor in women?
I don't know. I think one thing is that the same studies found that women are more likely to follow evidence-based guidelines.
Okay.
And, rather than wing it and think that they know everything.
Right.
And that may be one factor. But, people vary. Certainly there are compassionate and careful men
In
physicians.
every gender, right?
Yeah, and there's variation in women physicians as well. But I mean, this is an overall kind of trend. So
what made you decide to do this book at this point in your life? There had to be some kind of catalyst.
Yeah, there was. It was called downsizing. Yeah, so my partner and I decided to give up our big log home and move into a condo. And
by the way, I have a thing for log homes.
oh, it was fabulous. I'll have to send you a picture. It was just magnificent. But anyway, sadly, we decided, we better do this before. I mean, we're both in our 70s, so we thought now's the time. So I had this box in my closet I hadn't looked at for 40 years. I had old journals and letters from, old girlfriends, and we had this big burn barrel going, and I was going to toss it in the barrel. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just take a look. And then I got all engrossed in reading it. I started, all the old feelings came up, took me right back there. And I thought, well, I mean, my personal history is unique, but the struggles, my coming of age struggles, are universal.
Yes, they are.
So I thought, this is right material for a book, and I've always wanted to write. So, I sat down and started writing. And at first, I just wrote for myself. And my partner, by the way, was totally opposed to my writing a book and making it public.
Right. Right. That's when it's a memoir, that's always
right. Because, I mean, it had to do with my 20s when I was very much in transition and trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted. And so I've lost my train of thought, but anyway, it was.
We were talking about
downsizing.
downsizing.
Yeah. So she said, well, why do you want to stick your head in the past? It's over and done with. And I said, well, because the past influences us.
Absolutely.
It's not dead. It lives inside of us, and it determines how we react to things.
Absolutely.
So I thought, I just, first of all, would like to, when life is going back, when you're living it, it's going by in a blur and it seems fairly chaotic. But when you look back, you can tell that there is a pattern, there's patterns. And especially for this period of my life, it was very transformative. I went through a lot of change. And I thought I could answer some questions for myself that perhaps were too painful to contemplate at the time.
But it's very hard. I agree with your partner somewhat, not to let it go, because what happened then forms who we are now. But I'm thinking of myself, and I couldn't, like, if someone took 4 of my boxes of all the stuff I saved, I can't look at it. It makes me really sad. And I wrote a memoir called She's the Last Model Standing, and I did it off of, I've got those 40 years of photo albums. I had to use that so I could remember what happened.
Right.
And I have to tell you, I dreaded opening. I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's what you just said, that it forces you to think about things that were really painful.
Right.
Maybe it's a lot easier for us. We can sweep things away. We know they happen, but we can move on. But when you're doing what you did, there you were confronting your past, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh, totally. And there were things in there that you're right. I mean, they were very painful to remember. And I think in the process of writing it, for example, I have one cringeworthy chapter in my book that I was going to leave out. And I showed it actually to a couple of my younger friends, and they said, absolutely, you can't leave that out. It's so important to your journey. So I left it in, but
what made it cringeworthy? By the way, I love that word.
Yeah, I know. Well, I had an affair with an older man when I was trying to be straight.
That was the one,
And,
right? Okay.
yeah, and he was basically a predator. But somehow I felt the shame that he should have felt,
Older men, when they pray, remember, this is where Me Too came from.
Right, exactly.
Older men in that time, and in any time, I will say, often they'll prey on a younger woman and not feel any shame.
Right.
For whatever reason, she is the one left feeling shameful.
Right. And so when I wrote, I basically developed compassion for my younger self, who was basically out of naivety, operating the best I could based on, what I understood and knew at the time and my mental and emotional resources at the time. So writing about it allowed me to let it go.
Right.
So that was a good thing. And hopefully, it will resonate with, I know it will resonate with some women who've had similar experiences and have felt that kind of cringeworthiness.
The cringeworthiness.
Yeah.
How do you think the content of your book, of your coming of age, will affect kids in these times?
Well, a couple of ways. I mean, so Brené Brown, if you're familiar with her, she has this quote that I love, which is basically, you will write about your struggles and what you went through, and it will be someone else's survival guide.
Very well put.
And right. I love that, because that's what I'm hoping might be the case for younger people who read my book. Because, even though it happened in the 60s and 70s, sadly enough, some of the things are still happening today. I mean, there's still queer people and people of color, other marginalized people who
trans community.
Yeah, right. Yeah, who are told that their feelings are wrong, or they can't pursue their dreams because they're the wrong sex, wrong color, wrong whatever. And I'm hoping that my book will encourage people to lead authentic lives, to be themselves, and to pursue their dreams.
I first of all, I love your mission statement, what you just said, and second of all, some of the things you just brought up in our area, Triversity Services, the tri-state area, our organization, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, the more rural areas, right? And I don't have a kid in the school there, and I'm broadcasting right now from New York. I've been in Milford 22 years. I'm a big part of the community, but I raised my kid here for part of the reason is what I'm going to tell you next. I saw what was happening there, and it wasn't even like as horrific as it is now. We have school board meetings every Thursday, and not every Thursday, but most Thursdays. And I see what's going on in the high school now. Kids are being marginalized, and the people on the board, Patricia, I have heard things that would make your hair stand on end, especially trans kids so attacked, a kid for being gay. And these parents are, they're monsters, some of them. And what's so terrible, they have a lot of backing now because of, more so, I think, than when we were coming of age, because of politically what's going on in this country and what happened on the last administration. People that were quiet were given a voice.
Right.
Okay? And that voice many times is devoid of empathy. It's devoid of understanding humanity, and it's devoid of science. You're a doctor. I don't have to tell you that. And you hear things that people say, and you're like, we're in 2022. And it's very, it's very scary for me.
Well, it's happening all over again. Remember, I grew up in Arizona.
Yeah.
In the 60s, I went to, in 50s and 60s, and I went to medical school in Salt Lake City, one of the most conservative of the country. So, it was, it was definitely evident during my time. And, I sadly, as many parts of the country, including the ones that you're describing, it's still going on.
Oh, yeah. No, I tell my friends in New York, because New York's an amazing city, LGBTQ plus, whoever you want to be, whatever you want to be, it's all cool. And you can come here, live your life, and do your thing. But when I tell a lot of my friends that 1 hour and 40 minutes from New York City, the stuff that you're reading about in the paper, or the hate groups that you read on the list of Southern poverty law, that they're right 1 hour and 40 minutes from New York, they say, oh, come on. And that's like really unbelievable to me. Because here in New York City, anything goes. You have really great support services, and you get 1 hour and 40 minutes away from here, and it's a whole other story. And I see the world through rose-colored glasses, like you were saying, 50% of doctors in medical school are female, right? Dentists. I'm at the Explorers Club. I'm talking to female astronauts, lawyers. Okay. Women are huge.
Yeah.
What we do and who we are. And yet we've got this pole thing that's happening on the other side. And there are women that are supporting it. I don't get that at all.
I don't get that either, how people can support things that are not in their best interest.
In their own interests, right.
And it remains a mystery to me. But I had a similar experience, because when I went to Boston, I did my training in Boston. It was a whole different experience. And although I had to be closeted during my internship as the only woman, by the time I got to the Harvard School of Public Health, really my professors didn't care.
Nobody, right.
I was much more open about, I didn't broadcast being a lesbian. It was nobody's business, but if my girlfriend showed up on campus and gave me a hug or a kiss on the mouth, it was like, oh, well,
Right.
but it altered my sense of danger, I guess, because then when I moved to North Carolina
Oof.
and I was director of medical services for a 50,000 employee company, I just blithely went about my business, thinking that, again, it's nobody's business who I live with.
Right.
But when I took my girlfriend to a conference, because we were going to do some vacationing afterwards, the personnel director apparently got wind of this, and the corporate nurse came to me and said, he knows you're a lesbian. He's going to fire your ass. So it was like the best.
What year was that?
1984.
Right.
And it was actually the best thing that ever happened, because then I moved to Seattle.
Right.
Which was much more, open and friendly for being who I was.
Right. Remember, North Carolina is where we had the issue with the bathrooms. I'm just saying, still. Right. Still. So, at least you ended up in a place that was supportive for you. That's what it's all about. I want to talk to you a little bit about, as the writer of a first-time memoir, what your process, okay? Because as I told you before this show started, I got just such an impressive from your first email, and I don't talk about this with writers, but in your case, from your first email, the bio, the picture, the marketing, it was like all laid out, and I thought, my gosh, who would not want to have this person come on their show and talk about her incredible life?
Well, that's sweet. So you were in Milford, and my publisher from She Writes Press, Brooke Warner, was there.
Oh my gosh! Of course, I know who Brooke Warner is.
And so I have had a great experience publishing my book with She Writes Press. And
She Writes Press, and you probably know Amy Ferris.
I don't, but
okay, she and Brooke are like that. But while we're on this subject of Milford, we just had our Readers and Writers Festival,
right? And she was there.
I know she was, but you should reach out to her next year as a speaker. You've got this is great. I love this. This is what I'm all about. It's the 6 degrees of separation,
right,
and pushing a great agenda forward. I want you to promise me you're going to reach out to Brooke after this for the Readers and Writers Festival next year. It is one of the most dynamic things, I would say, in the country, and we started it in Milford. Brooke will tell you the whole story. But you would be, your book is coming out in October. You'd be such a terrific person to have on a panel. I'm not going to let you go either. I'm going to make sure.
All right. Well, you can recommend me to the Writers Festival.
Readers and Writers Festival, absolutely. So that was your publisher. How did you find your publisher?
Well, so as you know, I'm a medical doctor, and I write articles for medical books and chapters and things like that. Totally different. So when it came to writing memoir, I had some experience writing, but not that kind of writing. So I had to take classes. I went to Hugo House in Seattle, and I took I formed a writing group, and I continued. I just took a lot of classes, and one of them was a 6-month memoir writing class, and with Brooke Warner and Linda Joy Myers. So Brooke was my mentor, and I gave her more words than were required every week. She gave me back very critical feedback, and I just kept plugging away, and I just redo it and redo it and redo it. I really didn't think she liked my book because
so I was going to ask you, did you at any point feel, oh my gosh, maybe she doesn't like my book? Or did you also think, wait a minute, this is my life, these are my words, how can she tell me this?
Well, I mean, it was all good feedback. And sometimes I was like, whoa, but I recovered and I would just fix it. So I
You
did
kind
that
of have to
over.
park your ego at the door, as they
Yeah,
say.
totally. I had to completely park my ego. And realize I was on new ground. Um, so at the end, um, when I finished, she just asked me if I'd like to publish it with She Writes, and it was like, whoa, I thought you didn't like it, but I was really happy to do that.
Great story and extremely inspirational. Wow. How long did the whole process take from literally when you started uncovering your letters and you started writing? How
Yeah.
long did it take?
So we were doing the burn barrel downsizing in the spring of 2019. That's
And
when
for
I
those of you that don't know what a burn barrel is, I didn't know until I started spending weekends in Pennsylvania. I'm like, what are those horrible garbage looking cans? And you'd go by people's houses and you'd smell things burning. Those are burn barrels. You
Well,
put your
remember, we lived in a log house on acreage, so,
right.
but so that was in the spring of 2019. And then I started writing and realized I needed some help. So I hired a writing coach from Seattle University, Susan Myers, and she was so kind. I mean, she didn't do a lot of critique of my craft, which was practically non-existent at that point. And she just gave me feedback on how it impacted her. And it was so supportive and lovely. And I continued, to build up my craft skills by taking more classes. And the pandemic was perfect
Of
for
course.
writing because I was stuck in that log house, unable to travel, which was great because my partner loves to travel and I don't care for it that much. So I was in heaven just staying home
Oh,
and
well,
writing.
Log House, what could be more perfect?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
read a memoir, and then I'm picturing it in my mind's eye
Yeah, it's on a mountaintop,
with a fireplace going.
oh, with a wood stove and overlooking the Strait of San Juan de Fuca. So it was
Gorgeous.
ideal. So, uh, because I was writing intensively, I had my memoir finished by, I'd say the end of 2020.
And you started
Um,
it when?
I started it in the summer of 2019, but I have to tell you the rest of the time was revision.
Of
And
course.
revision is what makes good writing. And, fortunately, I kept revising and revising. And it seems like people like it because I did get a starred Kirkus review, which
You
is hard
did.
to come by.
Yes, they're very hard to get.
And interestingly, a lot of my reviews, you send out advanced reader copies to various reviewers, and I've gotten all 5-star reviews, and they've all been straight people. So,
Right.
I was surprised because I thought my audience would be limited to queer people, but apparently
You know
not.
what? A good story. So I only found the digital copy that you sent to me on Saturday. I only
Oh,
found that email this morning. And
oh,
I was doing another podcast. So in between, I was trying to take in
oh,
what I could.
yeah.
But not only is the writing excellent, it's digestible. And your story, I would never think like it would only appeal to a queer audience. It's a story. It's a good story. And it's a story of a very dynamic person, you, who, like, no matter what, you really did find out who you were. You got your authenticity. This
Mhm.
is who I am. And you made your life happen. Okay. And your memoir really, really shows that. And I think that is an inspiration for anybody.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. That was my goal I wanted it to resonate with some people who could see themselves in it and perhaps be inspired or validated in some way.
Validated in
Right.
some way. So we're coming to, I can't, this all went so quick, but I wanted to talk to you about what I call changing the names to protect the innocent.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Giving people, different names.
Yes. So first of all, as I said, my partner was not thrilled with me writing this personal story about all my business, right?
Right.
Especially,
Well, or airing your dirty laundry. I think
yes,
that's
and
what is my mother.
my relationships in
Right.
my 20s with multiple women, etc. So she said to me, I love the end result. I don't need to know the recipe.
Oh,
So
I like that one. That's
yeah.
funny.
So then I thought, it's only fair that I'm still in touch with most of the characters in my memoir. And so
These are people that are friends in
they're
your life.
friends. Yeah, they've been friends for 40 years or more, 50.
Kudos to you.
Especially David. David was actually my most stable relationship throughout that time was our platonic friendship with this gay man.
Right.
And we
He
lived
didn't know
together.
initially, though, that he was gay.
Well, I knew he was gay when I
He didn't know.
first met him, but he's muscular with a deep baritone. I don't know, I just knew, but he didn't come out until we started living together first year of medical school. He didn't come out until the fourth year of medical school.
Right.
So it took him much longer, but then he was from Cheyenne, Wyoming. So he had deep repression.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I wrote drafts and I shared it with people in my memoir. And I realized that not only did I need to protect my own privacy, and that of my partner, but also Cass, and that's not her real name, but she has been married to a man for the last 27 years, and he doesn't know that we had a romantic relationship all those years ago. And we're still friends. We see each other. He knows I'm writing a book, but, she would prefer that he not know.
Right.
And another woman that I also had an affair with was, she still maintains that she's totally straight. And I don't think she'd like to have her name, her her failing
Right.
total straightness broadcasted to the world. So I changed her name.
Well, it's out of respect that you do
Right.
that.
So writing under a pen name, it's not a cop-out, it's all there.
Not at all.
It just allowed me to avoid hurting people that I love.
Yeah. And really showing them respect, which is really great. It's considering somebody else's feelings, not just your own.
Right.
I made a similar attempt, and some of my descriptions were so in depth. There's one girl who was really my close friend who doesn't speak to me at all anymore. And I didn't say anything bad about her.
You just never know.
I reminisced about the kooky things that we did.
Yeah.
And that's all. They were funny stories. And it does. I'm telling you this because it still bothers me. I use different names, but it didn't, she just didn't want to talk to me again after that. I guess you know what, you take a chance. Listen,
well, I know that there will be people who, they bring their own experience to the memoir. I had close friends, very close friends, lesbian couple tell me that I shouldn't have talked about sex in it. It's just like, but it was part of the story.
Right? How can you write about your life without
part of life? Otherwise it would be, it wouldn't be a complete picture. And I must say, my memoir does show me as a flawed and complicated person. It doesn't show me in the best light at times. And who I was then will be fixed in the reader's mind. And who I am now, of course, is quite different. So that's another reason to use a pen name, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? As human beings, we are all flawed.
Right.
You are authentically a human being. And thank you so much for telling your story. My gosh, we're down to the wire. Can you tell people where they can find your book?
Everywhere. It's it'll be out October 11th, and it'll be available wherever books are sold.
And do you have some book signings planned and
Yes,
readings?
I have a book launch on the day that it comes out, October 11th, in Seattle at Third Place Books, Lake Forest Park, and some signings at Barnes and Noble. But I should say it's also going to come out in an audiobook, and I have this wonderful narrator, Alex Picard, did a fabulous job. So
absolutely fabulous. So great having you on. Wishing you all the best. If you do anything in New York, you better get in touch with me.
Thank you so much, Wendy. This has been great.
And I always take a parting picture. Cheese.
Cheese.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Good luck with your book. Good night, everybody.